"I need a husband by tomorrow," she said. I replied, "Then pack your bags for my place." At 11:47 p.m., she stood on my doorstep with a suitcase in one hand, tears running down her face, and a wedding ring that wasn't hers on her finger. She looked like someone who had just watched her entire life collapse in a single evening. I had known her for less than 10 minutes when she said the strangest thing anyone had ever said to me: she needed a husband by tomorrow morning. I should have closed the door. I should have told her to call a friend, a lawyer, anyone who wasn't a tired mechanic living alone in a small house at the edge of town. Instead, I looked at the suitcase, then at the trembling woman standing beneath my porch light, and remembered something my mother had once told me: sometimes people don't knock on your door because they want to enter your life. Sometimes they knock because they have nowhere else left to go. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one small act can completely change someone's life, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes the people who look like they have everything are the ones quietly falling apart. My name is Daniel, and at 36, I had become very comfortable with being alone. Not happy, exactly. Just comfortable. My life had narrowed into simple routines after my wife passed away 3 years earlier. I worked at a small auto repair shop during the day, came home to a quiet house at night, cooked simple meals, and spent my weekends repairing things that didn't matter because repairing things was easier than repairing myself. The woman on my porch was named Emily. I recognized her immediately, although I had never spoken to her before. Everyone in town knew her. She was the daughter of Richard Lawson, one of the wealthiest businessmen in the county. Emily had grown up surrounded by expensive cars, private schools, charity galas, and people who smiled at her because they wanted something from her father. She was supposed to marry a man named Victor the following morning. At least, that was what the newspapers had been saying for months. But now she was standing in front of me barefoot, wearing an expensive evening dress beneath a plain coat, with mascara streaked across her cheeks. She told me she had discovered something that night. Victor hadn't loved her. He had never loved her. He wanted her father's company, and the marriage contract gave him control over a large portion of it once they were married. Emily had overheard him discussing the arrangement with her father. When she confronted Victor, things became worse. Her father didn't deny it. Instead, he told her that the wedding would happen whether she wanted it or not because canceling it would destroy the family's reputation and cost them millions. Emily had one way out. According to an old condition in her grandmother's will, Emily would inherit controlling ownership of a family property and a significant trust if she entered the marriage willingly and remained independent of her father's business. But there was one strange clause her grandmother had added decades earlier: if Emily cancelled the arranged marriage before the wedding, she could preserve the inheritance by proving she had chosen another husband of her own free will. It sounded absurd. It was also the only legal loophole she had. The problem was that the ceremony was less than 12 hours away. She had called friends. They refused. Some were connected to her father. Others were frightened of Victor. One had even told her that she should simply go through with the wedding and leave afterward. Then Emily remembered seeing me at the repair shop earlier that week. I had fixed her car when she brought it in, and apparently I had made an impression because I was the only person she could think of who wasn't connected to her family's money. I stared at her in disbelief when she explained everything. Then she said she needed a husband by tomorrow. I didn't know whether to laugh or call an ambulance. Instead, I looked at her shaking hands and asked where she would sleep that night. She said she didn't know. That was when I stepped aside. I told her to pack her bags for my place. She hesitated as though she had expected me to ask for something in return. I didn't. I gave her the spare bedroom, made her tea, and slept on the couch. The next morning, we went to a lawyer. The arrangement was supposed to be simple. We would marry legally, remain separate financially, and eventually file for divorce once Emily secured her inheritance and escaped her father's control. There would be no romance. No pretending in private. No expectations. At least, that was the plan. The wedding took place in a small courthouse with only 4 people present: Emily, me, her lawyer, and the clerk. When she walked toward me, she wasn't smiling. Neither was I. But when we exchanged rings, something strange happened. I looked at her face and saw not a rich man's daughter, but a frightened woman desperately trying to reclaim control over her own life. For the first time in years, I understood what it meant to be terrified of losing everything. Because I had already lost everything once. After the ceremony, Emily moved into my spare room. The first few days were awkward. She didn't know how to use my washing machine. I didn't know how she took her coffee. She had never cooked a meal that didn't come from a restaurant, while I couldn't remember the last time I had eaten something I hadn't prepared myself. Yet slowly, strangely, our lives began to overlap. She started helping at the repair shop. At first, the other mechanics laughed when they saw her wearing an old work shirt and trying to learn how to change a tire. But she kept showing up. She learned. She listened. She became good at things she had never been required to do before. One evening, I came home and found her sitting on the back porch, looking through an old box of photographs. She had found a picture of my wife. Emily didn't ask questions. She simply said she was sorry. That was all. But something about those 2 words broke through a wall I had spent 3 years building. I told her about my wife, Sarah. I told her how she had died suddenly after an illness we thought she would recover from. I told her about the unfinished plans, the empty side of the closet, and the way grief had turned my house into a museum of everything I had lost. Emily listened without trying to fix me. That night, for the first time since Sarah died, I cried in front of another person. Emily didn't move closer. She didn't touch me. She simply stayed. And somehow, that was enough. Weeks passed. Our fake marriage became a strange kind of friendship. Then friendship became something neither of us wanted to name. But just when life began feeling normal, Victor returned. He appeared outside the repair shop one afternoon in a black luxury car. He told me Emily had made a mistake. He said she belonged with people who understood her world. I told him she was free to make her own choices. He smiled. Then he told me I had no idea what I was involved in. That night, Emily admitted she was scared. Not of Victor. Of losing me. She explained that Victor had discovered our marriage wasn't what it appeared to be. He had hired investigators. If he could prove that our marriage was fraudulent, Emily could lose the inheritance, and I could face serious legal consequences. I asked her what she wanted to do. She said she wanted to leave town. Without me. I couldn't understand why. Then she told me the truth. She had fallen in love with me. She said she hadn't planned it. She hadn't wanted it. She had entered my house carrying a suitcase because she needed a husband by morning, but somewhere between burnt dinners, late-night conversations, and quiet mornings, she had stopped seeing me as a solution to a problem. She saw me as home. I didn't answer immediately. Because I loved her too. But loving her meant risking everything. The next morning, we went to court. Victor was there. Emily's father was there. The lawyers were there. And for the first time, I realized the entire future of 2 people could be reduced to documents and signatures. Victor's lawyer presented evidence claiming our marriage had been arranged solely to secure Emily's inheritance. Then our lawyer presented something unexpected. Letters. Dozens of them. Letters Emily had written to her grandmother years before her death. In those letters, Emily had repeatedly described wanting a life away from wealth and control. She had written about wanting someone who would love her without knowing her family's name. The judge asked Emily whether she married me for the inheritance. She said yes. But then she added that she had stayed because she loved me. The courtroom went silent. The judge ruled that the marriage was legitimate because there was no evidence that we had entered it with the intention of deceiving the court or violating the law. Emily retained her inheritance. Victor lost everything he had expected to gain. But the biggest surprise came afterward. Emily's father approached us outside the courthouse. For a moment, I expected anger. Instead, he looked exhausted. He admitted that he had spent his entire life confusing control with protection. He had believed money could keep Emily safe from disappointment, heartbreak, and failure. But he finally understood that he had nearly pushed his daughter out of his life completely. He apologized. Emily didn't forgive him immediately. She simply told him that forgiveness would take time. And for once, he respected her answer. Months later, Emily opened a small community center in town using part of her inheritance. She wanted it to help people who had nowhere to go, especially women rebuilding their lives after losing everything. I continued working at the repair shop. Our life remained simple. There were no private jets. No giant mansion. No glamorous parties. Just a little house, 2 mugs of coffee every morning, arguments over whose turn it was to cook, and laughter that slowly replaced the silence I had grown accustomed to. One evening, almost a year after that night on my porch, Emily came home carrying a small suitcase. She placed it beside the door. I looked at her suspiciously. She smiled. Then she told me she was packing because she had somewhere she needed to go. My heart dropped. Until she walked toward me and pulled a small envelope from her pocket. Inside was a photograph from our courthouse wedding. On the back, she had written a single sentence. "This time, I choose you without needing anything from you." I looked at her, and she smiled through tears. The first time she had come to my door, she needed a husband because she was trying to escape a life chosen for her. The second time she walked through that same door, she wasn't escaping anything. She was choosing something. She was choosing me. And I finally understood that sometimes love doesn't arrive with flowers, perfect timing, or a carefully planned beginning. Sometimes it arrives at 11:47 p.m., carrying a suitcase, wearing someone else's ring, and asking for one impossible favor. Sometimes the person who comes into your life because they need somewhere to stay becomes the person who makes your house feel like home again. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need a little hope today. And before we end, I want you to leave one special comment: everyone deserves a second chance. Because Emily came looking for a husband by tomorrow. What she found was something neither of us had been searching for. A home. A family. And a love that was never part of the plan, but became the best thing that ever happened to both of us. And sometimes, the greatest miracles don't happen when life goes according to plan. They happen when everything falls apart, and someone chooses to stay.